The question, Raymond, was what did you want to be?
I don't know. Is that what you want to hear me say? Fine. Come on.
Not good enough.
And here we go.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
Believe in yourself.
Sticking feathers up your butt does not make you a chicken.
You merely adopted the dark.
What have I done?
You disappoint me. Surely you can do better.
I was born in it,
Do it. Make your dreams come true.
molded by it.
How can you possibly hope to stop me?
I didn't see the light until I was already a man.
The world could always use more heroes.
And then it was nothing to me but blinding.
Then what will you do, boy?
The shadows betray you because they belong to me.
Heroes never die.
What are you going to do? Who are you going to become? In short, how to be who? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of Questions Worth Asking. It's been 3 years since last we met, and though the road has been an arduous one, it seems at once like yesterday, and yet a lifetime ago. As it happens, 3 years is the price of episode 2. A labor of love, sleepless nights, endless conversations, and an ever-present need to put the story into words. For that is exactly what we have here, a story. Not a guide, not a list, and not even a rule to live by. I deliver this to you not as someone who knows, but rather as someone who guesses, albeit with an educated guess. In the Arthurian legend, King Arthur charges his Knights of the Round Table with the discovery of the Holy Grail. But where does one begin to search for something that could be anywhere? More to the point, where does one begin their search for the Cup of Christ, a holy relic of immeasurable significance? If the greatest stories have taught us anything of the rise and fall of heroes, we will likely conclude that the greatest accomplishments are attained only by confronting the greatest challenges. In this manner, no two knights of Camelot shared a road in their journeys. Instead, each entered the forest at the point which seemed darkest to him, acknowledging that the Grail's recovery would demand the greatest sacrifice that he was capable of making. So too shall we begin our time together, at the edge of the dark forest, with unknown perils ahead, in search of that which is worth discovering.
It's a dangerous business, Frodo. Going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
I say this both to prepare and encourage you. If the path seems grim, if all the world becomes buried in despair and you feel lost, alone, afraid, well, we'll see plenty of that together. But through it all, regardless of what evils we face, keep your eye on the hero. In the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass, a new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. I have this gift for you as you depart on your journey. Hope. Rebellions are built on hope. If your heart is heavy through the first 2 chapters, I encourage you to press forward. For faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens. Always keep your eye on the hero. You may discover, though you least expect it, that you yourself are the hero. Chapter 1 Chaos.
Do I really look like a guy with a plan? You know what I am? I'm a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I caught it. You know, I just do things. I'm not a schemer. I try to show the schemers how pathetic their attempts to control things really are. Introduce a little anarchy. Upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos. I'm an agent of chaos. Oh, and you know the thing about chaos? It's fear.
In order to lay a stable foundation for the rest of our discussion, I must first properly introduce you to chaos. Even before that, clandestine as it may sound to say, in all reality I must propose a fundamental definition for what there is. Call it the universe, the human experience, reality, what have you. We're going to start at the very beginning, at the force of nature nestled closely to the laws of gravity, physics, light, and magnetism. The law that has no function other than to observe the innate manifestation of its own existence. The law of duality, which simply states that nothing may exist in isolation. It is always accompanied by its opposite. Light only exists for its constant contrast with darkness. There cannot be good without an evil to overcome. There is no sound without a silence to break. Even the angels of heaven are matched by their counterparts in hell. Most critically for our discussion, there is no order without first the chaos from which it is born. In the fundamental text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu provides us with the fairest attempt at naming the nameless nature of the universe. I realize this may mean nothing to some of you, so let's start with a visual representation, what Westerners will recognize as the yin and yang symbol. The great Tao, 2 fish, one white, the other black, each with an eye of the opposite color, swimming in an endless loop. Yin, the black fish, is the feminine to Yang's masculinity. Yin is creativity, while Yang is protocol. Yin is chaos, Yang is order. The Tao Te Ching is quite short, particularly when compared to anything Christianity has produced, measuring just 8,000 words, half the length of this episode. It contains everything from a brief description of nature's ways to the proper practice of the Tao. Here's a small passage that shows us what we're after. The Tao that can be described is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be spoken is not the eternal name. The nameless is the boundary of heaven and earth. The named is the mother of creation. Freed from desire, you can see the hidden mystery. By having desire, you can only see what is visibly real. Yet mystery and reality emerge from the same source. This source is called darkness. Darkness born from darkness, the beginning of all understanding. When people see things as beautiful, ugliness is created. When people see things as good, evil is created. Being and non-being produce each other. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short define each other. High and low oppose each other. Fore and aft follow each other. To highlight the cornerstone that we've crafted and will continue to build against, chaos is not only the opposite of order, it gives birth to it. In the beginning there is chaos, and from it is born order, which will, inevitably, deteriorate back into chaos. As Lao Tzu puts it, darkness born from darkness, the beginning of all understanding. I'll try not to bludgeon you over the head with this, but doubt I'll succeed. Keep a weather eye out for the pattern as we progress. The cycle continues to appear in the Bible's book of Genesis. The order of Eden was broken by the chaos that dwelled within it. As a result, mankind is bent to the life of labor, giving birth to our fundamental source of suffering, mortality.
Why run away? What did you feel you had to run from?
Doctor, my wife is 7 months pregnant with a baby we didn't intend. My 15-year-old son has cerebral palsy. I am an extremely overqualified high school chemistry teacher. When I can work, I make $43,700 per year. I have watched all of my colleagues and friends surpass me in every way imaginable, and within 18 months, I will be dead. And you ask why I ran?
This is the beginning, both the source of chaos and the eye of order, the root of our path upwards. But the path itself is hidden in darkness, and until we get our bearings, we will be forced to crawl. This may be the beginning, but where is the beginning exactly? Though most of us can quite definitively say that we're not all we could be, that something eats away at our hearts, guilt or shame, telling us, in no uncertain terms, that we both ignore the path forward and, worse yet, often indulge in our favorite bittersweet forms of chaos. We may even fail when the day is brightest, and that is all the more tragic. Of course, not everyone is so deep in chaos that all of life is miserable, but no one escapes the chaos within their own hearts. And that is what I want us to explore. In earlier drafts, this was our shortest chapter. I considered it somewhat self-evident that too much of the unknown can be blatant cause for grief, that tempering chaos with order was the ultimate goal. I have since come to appreciate that true malevolence is not in all hell let loose, but instead a quiet and ignored or misunderstood rage. Chaos unbridled will gnaw at the edges of our reality, seep underneath the foundations of our lives, and corrupt the meaning of things. We all fear the disasters that are sure to strike, but only for their grand scale and relative rarity. I feel that we neglect to properly consider the lesser evils that permeate our daily habits. I suspect that upon close inspection, we may very well find that they are, altogether, the greater. This is a tale of 3 parts: wasted potential, inaction, and willful blindness. Which is the more sinister? That's one question I doubt we'll ever answer. Still, let us explore each in turn. First, the story of everything that we could be, if only we'd take up the mantle. This is the most conscious of the 3 because oftentimes we already know what we're leaving on the table. What if you'd done something, anything, with the half hour you wasted earlier today? What if you studied as much as you say you do? Because we all know you wasted about half of that 5-hour study session wishing against all wishes that it would just go away. You could have approached one more person, or one person at all, for that matter. Did you miss out on the love of your life? Maybe your life would be where you want it to be, if you'd done all the things you knew you should have done, but didn't?
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
Is it duty that keeps you from succeeding here? Do you half-knowingly crave a guiltless moment? A moment of self-expression or of reflection? Or even of nothing in particular where stillness is appreciated? But you have things to do. Maybe you know you'll only manage half of it anyway. Why not just take a little time? But you'd feel too guilty for it, so you trudge along. Alas, your subconscious will not be denied so easily, and you find yourself wasting a little bit more time. A little here, a little there. Of course, sometimes it's not so subtle and you'll waste an entire day. Not intentionally, of course, but really, who wants to do all the things you have to do? Perhaps your soul will take what it's due, against your will, even in whatever meager, stolen, and wasted form it can get. Maybe you wasted that time instead of dedicating it to either progress on the many things you need to do, or to something you want to do, because you just haven't properly linked the two. A disparity exists either by lack of discipline or lack of conscious effort to relate your desires to the actions that you constantly busy yourself with. Chaos has clouded your vision, dividing the present from the future. How can one make appropriate sacrifices in the moment when seeing the future benefit they'll reap for it is not there?
I'm just focused, I'm just committed. You know when you say to yourself, right, you know what you've got to do, right? We all know what we've got to do. We say to ourselves, I should do it this way, or I should do this. And when you don't do that, and then you carry on, you feel, you know, like I always say, doubt is removed by action. So if you're not working, then that's where the doubt seeps in. So I knew things I should have been doing and things I shouldn't have been doing, and I still did them and didn't do them, if you get me. But now I'm listening to myself, and I followed my internal instruction, and it's just given me more passion and more focus and more drive, and I'm doing what I feel I need to do, and it feels good. So that's it.
What of inaction? Those that cannot commit to order and therefore drown in chaos. I think there are two sub-factions to explore here: those who are paralyzed by choice and those who refuse it. The former fear the plunge into action for its uncertainty. Better the devil you know, they might say. Is this the right choice? What will happen if I'm wrong? Though the next question lies in the back of all our minds, we refuse to press it hard enough. What will happen if I do not choose? I firmly believe that the best choices we make are those at the crossroads of preparation and opportunity. We are often met with a divergence along the road, a choice. But some of those roads are closed to us, inaccessible due to a lack of preparation. We are only allowed to take the paths that we are equipped for. Moreover, I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that even an open road can be mistaken for a poor route, despite the fact that it would be, in reality, the best decision we could ever make for ourselves. Without having persevered by making choices in the past, it is these moments where we find ourselves unable to even see a good opportunity for what it is. Indeed, even if it were to slap you in the face. Only the naive believe that there is one true path, rather than many equally viable paths. But the second faction, those who refuse to take an active role in shaping their destiny, can develop a destructive nihilism against the road itself. What's the point in trying, they'll say. Why should I make any sacrifices when it's clear enough the world doesn't care? How's a man supposed to get ahead? I'll do my own thing, and the world be damned. I'd rather grab another beer and forget about it for the weekend. These people pitch a tent at the crossroads next to the last group, but they don't fear the choice, they're bitter about it. Regardless, the result is the same. Neither of them will go anywhere, for better or worse, to neither death nor glory. But that's not entirely true, is it? To their credit, this group knows one thing: life is suffering. The Epicurean mind tells them to eat, drink, and be merry while the getting's good, because tomorrow will probably do its best to take you out at the kneecaps anyway.
Life is suffering. Right. Indisputable. What do you do about that? You voluntarily accept it and then strive to overcome the suffering that's a consequence of that. And you do that for you, and you do that in a way that makes it better for other people. And then that works. But the funny thing about not assuming that is if you assume your time isn't worthwhile, what happens is you don't just sit around sort of randomly in a state of responsibilityless bliss. What you do is you suffer existentially. And so that seems like a stupid solution.
Success is generated where preparation meets opportunity. And if we are not prepared, if we do not prepare ourselves for that moment, then the world may pass us by. Perhaps, tragically, without us even knowing. Thirdly, let's discuss what I've settled on calling willful blindness. While all three tales are stories of self-deception, half-hidden truths, and conscious avoidance of both the root cause and the solution, I consider this to be the most outwardly dangerous, both to oneself and to those around us. Why? Because it is the furthest from what we know that we know. That is to say, we fool ourselves into believing that the problem is not in our own hearts, but in the hearts of others. This is the easiest tale to misunderstand because it deals in half-truths and scapegoats. Have you ever been angry with someone because they didn't do the dishes? Maybe they were in a rush and left them one evening, on accident or on purpose. As a rare occasion or a common occurrence, doesn't matter. Upon their return, a fight breaks out. Tears, shouting, the release of pent-up anger. Why? They're only dishes, after all. What fool would cause such an eruption over such a small thing? Because it's not about the damn dishes. The dishes are a scapegoat for something else, entirely unrelated, that hasn't yet found words to manifest itself. Now, we're not here to denigrate small chores. God only knows what happens when even a handful of them go unattended for too long. No, nobody denies that these things are important. But don't let the elephant hide behind the rat. It would be a tragedy to remain fixated on a rodent, insisting that it is the highest priority of everyone's attention, only to get bulldozed by an elephant because you were too blind to see it. There is an undeniable element of luck and lottery to life. We all take a beating eventually, regrettably, some more than others, and the inverse is also true. That said, if the universe seems to constantly conspire against you, if you feel that something, or perhaps someone, is always at fault for God knows what, if there is always a reason for why you can't be happy, completely regardless of who or what you think is to blame, then it's time you look inward instead. Chaos rages unchecked in your own heart, and the ignorance of man will often assume that it is being done to him. It is human nature to find what we are searching for, even if it doesn't exist. I propose that this tendency is what makes us dangerous to ourselves when we feel lost, but will not dare to cultivate our own goals, when we feel pain, but refuse to understand it. As we pass into the next chapter, I want to bridge the gap between complete chaos and depressive order. You see, not all chaos is evil, just not as all order is good. Too much chaos is simply painful, an unscalable model for life that is filled with uncertainty, terror, and malevolence. But the same is true for too much order. It can squeeze the very meaning of life out of the world, beat down all forms of creativity, and brutalize anything unique in the name of a tyrannical model. The path lies somewhere in the middle. It is the curved divide down the center of the great Tao, the ever-shifting balance of the scales between both order and chaos. Given that life's default trajectory, if we do not pay attention and live our lives with purpose, is to deteriorate into, let's say, some form of suffering. I have arranged the rest of our time together in a way that explores the upward climb out of chaos and towards the line of balance by introducing order. As we're about to see, however, it is not always a straight path forward for many reasons, not the least of which is the ever-present possibility that you may be walking the wrong way. Chapter 2. Anarchy and false idols.
What is this? This is a chemical burn. Will hurt more than you've ever been burned, and you will have a scar.
What are you doing?
Stay with the pain. Don't shut this out.
No.
Look at your hand. The first soap was made from the ashes of heroes, like the first monkey shot into space. Without pain, without sacrifice, you would have nothing.
I tried not to think of the word searing the flesh.
Stop it! This is your pain. This is your burning hand. It's right here.
Get the point, okay,
no,
please.
what you're feeling is premature enlightenment. This is the greatest moment of your life, man, and you're off somewhere miserable.
I am not.
You were looking for a way to change your life.
God, our fathers were models for God. If our fathers failed, what does that tell you about God?
You cannot do this on your own. All the ways you wish you could be, that's me.
Listen! You can run water over your hand to make it worse, or look at me! Or you can use vinegar to neutralize the burn.
I'm free in all the ways that you are not.
Please let me have it, please.
First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear, know that someday you're gonna die. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
We begin with the most basic idea. If you find yourself in the heart of darkness, then there is only one thing to do: walk forward. But which way? That's the question. You need to know where you're going. You need an ideal, a destination, a mountain to climb, a hero to become. The ideal is a judge, and the greater the ideal, the higher the mountain, the harsher the judge. All along the way, you only have 3 points of reference: who you once were, who you are now, and who you are becoming. If you have chosen wisely, then your hero is the highest mountain you can see. But that also means a vast distance exists between the two of you. That challenge alone can crush a man just as easily as empower him. I have about 6 years of notes and journal entries exploring this idea. In full transparency, I want to show you one from April 6th, 2020. Sometimes my exploration of stories can become a trip to the underworld. It forces me to think in ways I couldn't before, to see in life things I had not yet seen, or perhaps had forgotten. I see now something of the gap between myself and those lesser than me, and also the staggering distance between who I am now and who I want to become, or perhaps who I could be. It's like staring across a wide canyon filled with black static. I have no idea how I will cross it. It makes me want to fight to deserve the best in life. I already know that I am not worthy, but I could be. I, just like so many heroes before me, can grow from a fool to a master. But it's not just about conquering myself. Many thinkers have figured that out. You can't control yourself much more than you can control someone else. I suppose that's where the ideas of integration and enlightenment come from. I was closing in on the answer, but I was still missing some critical components. There must be a next step, and how to navigate the foothills in front of you, rather than worry about the challenge that lies in the more distant future, needs to be your primary focus, in no small part due to the hidden dangers that will seek to lead you astray. A false idol will absolve you of responsibility to pursue the ideal. He will offer you an alternative path, one of his own design. He will promise utopia, relief from the pain of your present state, he will teach you to be a man of your own design by preaching against the established way. It is the sad state of the world we live in that beats you down this way, he'll say. You are an outcast, denied what is rightfully yours by those who sit atop their high horses, shunning you for seeing the truth.
We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'd all be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. We're slowly learning that fact. We're very, very pissed off.
Here's one very important distinction to make. Whether or not you believe in an ideal, and there are many names for it, perhaps you'd prefer higher power or alpha, take your pick. Or whether or not you say you believe in an ideal matters very little. I'm sure I'll say this again before we're done here, but it rings true all the same. The things you say only matter to the extent that they are congruent with your actions. And, as we discussed last time, it remains the case that people do not always match what they say with what they do. This is important to consciously note because it's likely enough that most of us, at least at some point in our lives, if not at present, have probably fooled ourselves into thinking we are aiming for something, when it's far more likely that we have simply allowed ourselves to become subconsciously latched onto a foggy image of something to strive for. In his work, The Republic, the philosopher Plato gave us his allegory of the cave. We sit within this cave and watch as shadows pass across the wall. A hidden light shines over puppets that create the dancing images before us. If this is all we've ever known, then we can be easily fooled into believing that the shadow elephant in front of us is what elephant means. And how could you know any better, imperfect and finite as you are? Until somebody takes you outside, shows you the light and all the things it touches, the reality behind the concept. And it's possible that you could live your entire life inside that cave, having never known anything greater.
Is that what a man looks like?
Self-improvement is masturbation. Now self-destruction.
It's very easy to see if this is you. Here's the test. How many of you have a well-written hard copy that details the person you want to become and why? No? What about the next best thing? Could you produce an intelligent answer on the spot, with a good explanation for what you want to become, what you want out of life, and why that is important to you? How much of that answer was a canned response that you'd give to Aunt Janice at Thanksgiving dinner? How about the next best? Have you even had that conversation with yourself? Can you honestly say that you've put conscious effort into deciding this for yourself? Or is the best you can do a second-hand account for what is good? For example, pointing to a religious figure and say, "I'll be a good person, I'll follow their teachings." If I forced you to pause this episode and talk until you ran out of words, real words, how long could you last? Perhaps you'll be one of the few, but it is my experience that even the best of us are often lacking. And it's no great mystery as to why it's really hard to be that attentive to the finer points of your life. Nations, empires, and religions have littered human history with their attempts to build the perfect world. We have spent millennia trying to figure out what, exactly, it is that we should be up to on this spinning death ball of a planet. And what do we have to show for it? Well, that depends on where you look. And it depends on who you trust. The principal point that I'm making here is this. What you believe in matters. The reason why you believe in something is equally critical. How many different ways has humanity tried to solve this riddle that is life? Socrates tried to show us that knowledge is innate, that we know all things and only need to learn in order to consciously master them. David Hume argued the opposite, that we are entirely a byproduct of our environmental influences. Stalin was convinced that he could rebuild the Russian Empire, just as Mao did the same in China. Together, they killed hundreds of millions of people in their conviction, dwarfing Hitler's slaughter of 6 million Jewish people. The darkest and most terrible realities can come to fruition of the strongest wills. If the leaders of nations who defined human history can get it so wrong, if even the grandest philosophers can disagree so wildly on basic assumptions of human existence, what makes you think you have a shred of hope to find the right path on your own? We are, all of us, more hopelessly lost than we'll ever admit to ourselves, more trapped in the present than any of us would care to recognize. Until you understand that you would have been a Nazi prison guard too, if that was your soul's time and place, then you'll never properly understand the true danger of a false idol. You must accept the reality of their influence, lest you fall prey to them and become a space monkey. Here, we find ourselves in the very heart of chaos, faced with a terrible and burning question at the crossroads, but no way of knowing which path to choose. Some will leave it to chance. Others will take a best guess by what little data is available to them. Fewer still will consult what tools they've been able to bring along, a rough-drawn map or a makeshift compass. And select few that have traveled each road before will guide others when they can. But who do you trust? Now we've come to it at last. Who to trust? The farmer carting his wares to market? The wise old widow that lives in a hut nearby? The plain but pleasant-looking fellow that you met along the road? Or perhaps the knight, gallant upon his shimmering steed? How do you know who is trustworthy? If you were to take any one of them at their word, you could never prove that they were telling the truth, until you arrive at your destination, of course. Oh, and just how far is that? Around the corner, you say? Or was it thousands of miles away? Until then, it is only your opinion of the person that can say whether or not they speak the truth. Are you willing to go all that way on their word? And who are you to judge, after all? Just because the old woman has a couple warts and carries toads, doesn't mean she isn't very wise. Just because the knight is a brave warrior, does not mean that his character is unquestionable. What makes you so sure that you can properly discern truth from falsehood, or to decipher half-truths, hearsay, and old wives' tales? Are you so confident that you could identify Tyler Durden for what he is before it's too late?
Which one is it?
You must choose. But choose wisely. For as the true grail will bring you life, the false grail will take it from you.
I'm not a historian. I have no idea what it looks like. Which one is it?
Let me choose.
Thank you, Doctor. It's more beautiful than I'd ever imagined. This certainly is the cup of the King of Kings.
He chose poorly.
Simply put, it is dangerous to pursue the wrong ideal. How are you to navigate this insurpassable dilemma then? That is what we will discuss in Chapter 3. First, I have one more story to share with you about the path and its many untold perils. You see, it is not simply the case that you yourself may be at fault for choosing the wrong thing, or refusing to choose properly, as we discussed in the previous chapter. It is perfectly possible, and indeed probable, that you will be misled along the way. I believe that it is critical for us to fully understand just how likely it is we'll fool ourselves into complacency, the sin of omission is no small thing. You must live intentionally. That is the very reason why my constant focus is on asking the right questions. The questions worth asking. This is the only way to avoid falling prey to our ideologies, to becoming a Nazi prison guard, to deteriorating into space monkeys.
Like a monkey ready to be shot into space. Space monkey.
I must be blunt by stating that you cannot omit any source from the eye of investigation. Although I have and will continue to cite many religious texts and philosophies, you must take careful note of their variety. In my experience, people will glaze hardest over religious statements, texts, and figures as though they are immune to scrutiny. This is the greatest sin of all that you must not commit. With that at the forefront of our attention, I present you with a story from the Latter-day Saint Book of Mormon, the story of the iron rod in the first book of Nephi, chapter 8. In summary, Lehi has a vision of the tree of life. He sees himself partaking of its fruit and encouraging his family and community to join him in this wondrous revelation. But between them all stands a long, dark path through which nothing can be seen, through which nothing is certain. The only guidance through the mist is an iron railing to which one may cling. Some pass through successfully, others lose their faith in the destination and fall away from the path. Some are misled by naysayers, who openly mock the goal that they had set out to achieve. Even a handful of those that make it to the tree are convinced that what they have done is shameful, and that they ought to forsake the tree of life for the wasteful comforts enjoyed by those who sneer. And it came to pass that I beheld a tree, whose fruit was desirable to make one happy. And it came to pass that I did go forth and partake of the fruit thereof, and I beheld that it was most sweet, above all that I had ever before tasted. Yea, and I beheld that the fruit thereof was white, to exceed all the whiteness that I had ever seen. And as I partook of the fruit thereof, it filled my soul with exceedingly great joy. Wherefore I began to be desirous that my family should partake of it also, for I knew that it was desirable above all other fruit. And I beheld a rod of iron, and it extended along the bank of the river, and led to the tree by which I stood. And I also beheld a straight and a narrow path, which came along by the rod of iron, even to the tree by which I stood. And I saw numberless concourses of people, many of whom were pressing forward, that they might obtain the path which led under the tree by which I stood. And it came to pass that they did come forth, and commence in the path which led to the tree. And it came to pass that there arose a mist of darkness, yea, even an exceedingly great mist of darkness, insomuch that they who had commenced in the path did lose their way, that they wandered off and were lost. And it came to pass that I beheld others pressing forward, and they came forth and caught hold of the end of the rod of iron, and they did press forward through the mist of darkness, clinging to the rod of iron, even until they did come forth and partake of the fruit of the tree. And after they had partaken of the fruit of the tree, they did cast their eyes about, as if they were ashamed. And I also cast my eyes round about, and beheld, on the other side of the river, a great and spacious building, and it stood, as it were, in the air, high above the earth. And it was filled with people, both old and young, both male and female, and their manner of dress was exceedingly fine. And they were in the attitude of mocking, and pointing their fingers towards those who had come out and were partaking of the fruit.
Listen up, maggots. You are not special. You are not a beautiful or unique snowflake. You are the same decaying organic matter as everything else.
And after they had tasted of the fruit, they were ashamed, because of those that were scoffing at them, and they fell away into forbidden paths, and were lost.
What can men do against such reckless hate?
Behold, he saw other multitudes pressing forward, and they came and caught hold of the end of the rod of iron, and they did press their way forward, continually holding fast to the rod of iron, until they came forth and fell down, and partook of the fruit of the tree. And he also saw other multitudes feeling their way towards that great and spacious building.
You're not your job. You're not how much money you have in the bank.
And it came to pass that many were drowned in the depths of the fountain, and many were lost from his view, wandering in strange roads.
Not the car you drive. You're not the contents of your wallet. You're not your fucking khakis. You were the all-singing, all-dancing crap of the world.
And great was the multitude that did enter into that strange building. And after they did enter into that building, they did point the finger of scorn at me and those that were partaking of the fruit. But we heeded them not. Chapter 3 Legends and the Hero of Heroes.
A vigilante is just a man lost in the scramble for his own gratification. He can be destroyed or locked up. But if you make yourself more than just a man, if you devote yourself to an ideal, and if they can't stop you, then you become something else entirely. Which is? Legend, Mr. Wayne.
And now we come at last, out of the foggy marshlands to the rolling foothills. The crossroads before us now fork most harshly, for it is time to choose our mountain. Judge not a peak by its size or piers, but by the journey which will bear you hence. For us, my fellow traveler, it is time we turn our attention away from the war-torn lands that we've fled, away from the perils of the path and sirens of the sea, and now towards the vision, to the future, to the heroes that we shall become and continue to strive for. But which mountain to climb? In my estimation, there is a very real wisdom in the necessity of adopting humanity's collective narrative. After all, you only have 100 years to live, and, as any economist worth his salt will tell you, the multilateral act of specialization will always result in the most efficient system. Put simply, you don't have enough time to figure everything out on your own. Just as you could never make your own shoes, grow your own wheat, and launch your own satellites all at once. These things take more than time. They take the dedication of countless people over the entirety of human history, only culminating in spectacular fashion out of the depths of chaos. If the dilemma of our personally flawed judgment is verifiably inescapable, then it seems to me only reasonable that there is nothing else to be done except to proceed with caution. If the compass isn't quite right, then we'll just have to upgrade it as we go. As Polonius will tell us in my favorite Shakespearean play, Hamlet, "This, above all, to thine own self be true, for it must follow, as night the day, that thou canst not then be false to any man." I find it miraculously mirrored across the centuries in a poem that I'll share with you in its entirety later. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. Stephen Fry has some excellent dialogue on myths and the stories that have permeated across time. Jordan Peterson told us earlier that life is suffering. And though many of us might be initially inclined to shy away from that fact, it certainly seems the case that the most fundamental narrative for humanity is the struggle to overcome the dangers of existence. Indeed, we have a fine example again from the book of Genesis. Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, wrestles with the man who is revealed to be God. Though they struggle through the night and God dislocates Jacob's hip, he is proud of Jacob's performance and grants him the name of Israel, in Hebrew meaning he who contends with God. And he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed." From Genesis chapter 32, verse 28. In fact, it's perfectly reasonable to propose that the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, are built around the identity of the oppressed. In my opinion, it is no small coincidence that regardless of a culture's metaphysical beliefs, it will reliably tell and retell the stories of heroes who have battled with the agents of chaos in the formation and defense of the world. If you understand the redemption of Tony Stark, then you will also understand the arc of Ulysses. In both instances, a prodigal intellect's pride becomes his downfall, his heart, his redemption. Tony may well be our favorite genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist, but he began his hero's journey as a flawed man, full of pride, lust, and gluttony. His imprisonment tempered his desire towards a higher purpose, to the hero that saved the world time and again, and would ultimately sacrifice everything.
I shouldn't be alive. Unless it was for a reason. I'm not crazy, Pepper. I just finally know what I have to do. And I know in my heart that it's right.
Ulysses shared his vices. The mastermind behind the sacking of Troy could not value humility in his subsequent defeat of the Cyclops Polyphemus, a mistake that brought down the curse of Poseidon upon him and his crew, dooming them to battle many terrible demons in their desperate bid for Ithaca. The price for his return home would be 10 years of toil and the loss of his men and ship to the sea monster Charybdis. Then he was forced to reprove himself as a king and husband before finally reclaiming his throne. There are common denominators between all the great heroes, and it should be part of your vision to cultivate these traits according to the heights you desire to achieve. A hero has many eyes. He pays attention. She speaks well. Only the most charismatic and articulate among us can lead effectively. Both are willing to confront chaos, to find the dragon in its cave, and to challenge it willingly before the kingdom burns. The constant renewal of humanity's stories tells me one thing. We will always need heroes. If life must be suffering, then it is our duty to accept it. And there can be no better course than to rise up against it with all the glory we can muster. You'll remember that good may not exist without evil, and in this way we must recognize that the magnitude of greatness that can be achieved is in direct correlation to the lowest depths of hell. We are all given the choice that was first presented to Achilles: to live a long, mundane existence without terrible strife, but to leave an empty legacy, or to burn brightly against the agents of chaos, to carve our names into the stars, and defy the decay of time, to meet evil in open combat, for as long as our spears remain unshattered.
Heroes never die!
As Thoreau warned us, however, that is a choice you must make consciously. For the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. Heroes will always be needed, from the demigods of Greece to the Avengers of today, because evil never dies either. That said, heroes are not perfect. Nothing, no one, is. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling soap. We've already proven the dangers of elevating one too highly. Remember, heroes are not idols. They are, however, the many faces of something greater, the metahero. The one that cannot be described in singularity, for he and she is the aggregation of all other heroes, just as the Mesopotamian Tiamat was at once the sum and source of all the lesser gods. You'll recognize the hand of Joseph Campbell here. The metahero is the embodiment of the rise, fall, and redemption arc. Never perfect, but always moving onward and upward. That is why inaction is a sin of chaos, just as nihilism is the antagonist to progress. The Muslim faith hosts two doctrinal sources at its foundation, the Quran and the Hadith. The Quran is, of course, the primary text of Islam and counterpart to the Christian Bible. Hadith are something else entirely, though. Collective accounts of the words and actions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, made by his companions after his death. The factions of Islam largely hinge upon the validity attributed to some or all of the Hadith, as it forms the basis for the interpretation of Sharia. But that is a matter for your exploration at another time. From the coagulation of these texts has emerged a phenomenon I'll introduce to you as the many names of God. In the Sahih Bukhari, one book among 6 within the Kutub al-Sitta, the pillars of Sunni Islam, Abu Huraira, one of Muhammad's closest companions, reports that there are 99 names for God, as carefully chosen from both the Quran and Hadith. He says, Allah has 99 names, 100 minus 1, and whoever believes in their meanings and acts accordingly will enter paradise. From the Sahih Bukhari, Volume 8, Book 75, Hadith 419. God is the great forgiver, the dominator, the provider, the most merciful, and so on. Likewise, the metahero, the hero of heroes, is both Princess Leia and Winston Churchill, Hermione Granger and Heracles, Jack Sparrow and Jordan Peterson. Legends wear many faces, manifest themselves time and again in fresh forms, but always they spark within our hearts the desire to confront chaos, to rise in the face of evil, fall in the perils of the path, and redeem ourselves in victory. Each of them possesses distinct qualities that mark them as a hero, but so too do they bear their own unique flaws. While it is good to emulate a hero, it is never the intention to become them. Everyone recognizes that Batman displays the qualities of compassion, justice, and devotion. These are his heart, the characteristics that ultimately prevent him from becoming a villain in his own right. But he is also proud and obsessive in his work. He can be so fixated with his purpose as a hero that he loses all sense of the man beneath the mask, alienating the precious few loved ones he has. The Batman is a symbol of bravery in the face of fear, the beacon of hope to all those who look to the night sky for courage. Batman was a hero, but you should never strive to become Bruce Wayne.
Just make sure you can trust yourself. Start there.
Good advice, LT. I want to be like you when I grow up.
You want to be better than me, Johnny?
This does not, of course, mean that you should reject all that is dark. If we only have 100 years to live, if life must be cruel in its nature, then the least humanity deserves is the greatest hero that we can conjure. But the hero you deserve may not, necessarily, be the hero you need, at least not right now. Though Jack Sparrow certainly radiates charisma and proves himself to be a good man, even a selfless man, when pushed to the edge of the world, he is still a pirate, after all. Still, in his constant quest for freedom, he may have something to teach you.
The only rules that really matter are these. What a man can do,
and what a man can't do.
He is the anti-hero, you might say. A complex character with moral ambiguity and often questionable methods. The BBC show's Sherlock Holmes bears similar qualities.
Because Sherlock Holmes is a great man. And I think one day, if we're very, very lucky, he might even be a good one.
It's perfectly possible that the hero you need is not a hero at all. Sometimes you need something more. A dark knight. Someone to be whatever you need them to be, at least in this moment. Legends don't begin as fully fledged demigods. They must grow to become them. That's the point. Every legend learns their lesson. Inevitably, if you are to endure the hero's journey, then you will follow in each of their footsteps, one after the next, lesson upon failure, upon tragedy. Let each legend be a guide to you in their turn at the proper time.
I can do those things because I'm not a hero. Not like that. I killed those people. That's what I can be.
No, you can't. You're not.
I'm whatever Gotham needs me to be.
A hero. Not the hero we deserved, but the hero we needed. Nothing less than a knight. Shining.
I'll hunt you. You'll hunt me. You'll condemn me. Set the dogs on me. Because that's what needs to happen. Because sometimes truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
Why is he running, Dad?
Because we have to chase him.
Okay, we're going in! Go, go!
He didn't do anything wrong.
Because he's the hero Gotham deserves. But not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him. Because he can take it. Because he's not our hero. He's a silent guardian. A watchful protector. A dark knight.
Within every true hero lies the potential for a villain. Without those qualities of chaos, they would have no path towards a higher order. It is their ability to overcome... No. Though they do overcome the worst of it, but that's not entirely it. No, better to say that they master their chaos. It is not an obstacle to surpass, then leave behind. Try as you might, you can't detach your demons. They'll always be a part of you.
For instance, you can accept that your father was a pirate and a good man, or you can't. The pirate is in your blood, boy, so you'll have to square with that someday.
The only alternative, lest you grant them free reign over your life, which plenty of people do, and you know what that's like. When someone drinks too much to forget the present, neglect your duty to love someone as they deserve, or give one too many white lies, even to yourself. Literally, pick your poison. Is to integrate their powers into your own. A hero cages the worst demons and puts the rest to work for him when it's necessary. A rabbit is not virtuous when it doesn't hurt anyone. It's a bloody rabbit. There's nothing dangerous about it. It can't hurt anyone. If you don't have any tooth or claw to you, then you, too, are a rabbit. But if you have no mastery of your own darkness, then you become a menace to yourself, a tyrant to others. They may fear you, but they'll never respect you.
What if after everything that I've been through, something's gone wrong?
inside me? What if I'm becoming bad?
I want you to listen to me very carefully, Harry. You're not a bad person. You're a very good person who bad things have happened to. You understand? Besides, the world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on.
In this manner, we begin a process of circumambulation. As we climb our mountain, we are on the constant lookout for signs of the proper path upward, for the cardinal qualities of heroes who have gone before us. But those can be far and few between sometimes, and it only makes sense to also perform a negative analysis of where not to go, what not to be at the same time. There is knowledge to be gained in that, too, because you can learn to recognize which forks in the path will lead to cliff edges, hidden pits, and dead ends. A hero will master themselves, both the light and the dark. They are dangerous, but only when they have to be. If, in an argument, you must shake your sword in its sheath to remind your adversary that escalation carries very real consequences, and they do the same, then you'll find that both parties are further motivated to resolve the conflict in a more civil manner. Like a wolf that challenges the alpha, in most cases, all the snarling, bared teeth and hackle-raising tends to conclude without an actual fight. One will roll onto his back and submit himself to the other, having been convinced that if he had chosen to fight, then he would have either lost or sustained more damage than he was willing to accept in victory. In fact, this duality is the primary motif for Beauty and the Beast. The prince's arrogance and disregard for his peers is what brought him down in the first place. He had no control over his own dark character, so the old woman cursed him to embody the demons within. His only redemption could be to foster love within his own heart, to reverse the previous order, that of a beast within a prince, to a prince within a beast, and for that love to be shared with someone else.
There may be something there that wasn't there before.
And with that, we arrive at a very important waypoint in our journey. Before you rest, I have another gift for you. More than all these stories and ideas, I give you something very concrete. Something that, in my mind, captures the essence of our discussion in a neat literary form. Only poetry could do such a thing, where every word within a phrase can mean so much more than it says. We've discussed the more, now I'll show you the words that can be remembered to represent them. I will confess to have indulged quite thinly in poetry, but of what little I have explored, I most enjoy Rudyard Kipling's If, written in 1910. Where show notes are available, I'll link the video that you're about to listen to. I have returned to these words countless times in the years since I discovered them. They have become my litany in times of despair, my compass in doubt, and temperance in triumph. Heed these words, and a hero's destiny may well await you.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truths you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
Chapter 4: How to Be Who.
How can I trust the man that breached the walls of my city?
Well, I'm starting to think I'm no longer the same man who breached those walls.
That's a short time for a man to change so much.
Perhaps.
It sounds as if you've discovered something here.
What might that be?
A new spiritual awareness.
A destiny.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I believe we make our own destiny, Princess.
You have an unfortunate lack of curiosity.
No doubt one of my many flaws.
Please don't mock me, Prince.
Oh, I hardly think we know each other well enough for that, Princess. But I look forward to the day that we do.
I believe that destiny is the line between chaos and order that runs down the middle of each of our hearts. How you choose to walk that line, and where it takes you, that is destiny. Not everyone should climb the same mountain. First of all, those challenges are only meant for those who can. Let us be honest with one another. Not everyone has what it takes. This baffled me beyond reason in my youth because I could not understand why someone wouldn't strive for greatness. It took me a long time to figure out the simple truth that not everyone can. Even longer to discover, much to my chagrin, that even of those who can, some don't want to. More than that, it was a mistake of naivete to see this as a bad thing. But don't we all make that mistake? Just like Tyler Durden, have we not idolized the prominently successful, only to look down on ourselves for performing so medially? I'll say we, because I can be relatively certain that we're all guilty of what is called the hedonic adaptation, something I've also heard referenced as the law of 103%. No matter how well we do in life, it doesn't take long for us to desire something more, to believe that what we have accomplished is medial in comparison to what is possible. Do you see now why I've chosen the metaphor of a mountain? Anyone who has ever climbed one knows that every ridge looks like the top. Until you get there, of course, only to see one more crest to breach. This means two things to me. First, that it is human nature to desire progress. and this much I can only applaud with mighty enthusiasm. No one should be content enough to stagnate, to have the same conversations with the same people, only to make the same jokes, about always having the same day. Tony Robbins, a prolific philanthropist, has always pushed us to understand that growth is one of the 6 essential human needs. When we're not growing, then we begin to die inside. I do not care how high or low, treacherous or safe your mountain is, but climb it well, and never discard the chance to climb something better when it arises. If, as we discussed earlier, you are prepared for the opportunity. This is the path of progress. If we have nothing else, then we have progress. Now, the second lesson I can take from the law of 103% is less altruistic. It means that whether or not what we have achieved is good may quickly become less relevant than how it compares to something better. To be sure, we should never hide away from unrealized potential. Greatness is a judge, and it can judge quite harshly. But that is the only way to expose ourselves to what is possible. That's how we learn. To shrink away from the brightest light would only be a disservice to others, and a tragic waste of ourselves. This is why we admire greatness, why the Louvre galleries contain almost $50 billion worth of the world's oldest and greatest art. This is no phenomenon to be shrugged away. Even Hitler coveted works of art. Few know of the Risa project, which packed Europe's lurid artwork into a tunnel system in Poland that was nearly 6 miles long. Even the worst of us admire the greatest. But what does that mean for you? In the most serendipitous fashion, here, in the midst of chaos, we discover Episode 1. Why don't we know what we want? You'll remember that there are 2 reasons. Number 1, you have it. Or number 2, you don't know yourself. If this hedonic adaptation, the law of 103%, must be taken so seriously, then I see 3 paths. The first would be to recognize that our accomplishments are merely a shadow of what they could be, and so we must undertake the disciplined journey of bettering ourselves, to follow the footsteps of greater heroes, to pull the sword from the stone, and take responsibility for our kingdom. The second, as discussed, would be to hide away, to become nihilistic and bitter against all that is great, and, for some with truly blackened hearts, to become the Joker and seek to actively tear down that which they see as ivory towers. As a note of emphasis, don't fool yourself into false complacency by believing that the only symptoms of this madness are grotesque acts of violence. A tweet that denigrates the rich for their greed and gluttony, a pointing of fingers and sneering at privilege, or conversations that turn ugly against your quote-unquote oppressors. These acts are no less guilty of hedonistic chaos. That aside, the third path is what I'd like to put on more prominent display. That of acceptance. Again, do not mistake acceptance for resignation. There is a difference between owning your position to find the peace and fulfillment that all men strive for, regardless of how that compares to others, and the act of hiding yourself in the present out of fear for the future.
But you know, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times, if one only remembers to turn on the light.
So, you didn't become a movie god or a rock star, or perhaps are now realizing that you may not. If you have done everything to ensure that it was not for lack of desire, discipline, or disposition, then you may consider that you were only chasing the shadows on the wall. If the goal was not the goal itself, but to achieve what it stood for, Is it possible that you succeeded without realizing it? Or, in the final analysis, might you discover that what you have now may or may not have been what you wanted before, but it is what you want now? And, as we discussed previously, I don't mean what you say you want, but what you act as though you want, given that by de facto, if you truly wanted more, then you would be demanding the higher sacrifices of yourself to achieve it. I propose the following, that even after all due consideration, and the known caveats, that growth and progress can and should be desired, even from a position of success, it is possible for one to have everything that they want. At the very least, everything they're willing to sacrifice for. It is possible for one to accept this reality, to choose it rather than submit to it, and therein lies the fulfillment that he would have fruitlessly chased to the ends of the earth. Can you find peace in the present? Peace enough that you can be happy, regardless, or perhaps even because of, the challenges that you face within it. Because everyone battles adversity, and if this is the battle you must fight, if it is the right battle for you, the opportunity that you're prepared for, then perhaps a degree of pride in meeting it head-on could be warranted.
Perhaps on the rare occasion pursuing the right course demands an act of piracy. Piracy itself can be the right course.
I'm not suggesting that all of us should do this, and I certainly don't mean to portray acceptance as a final solution. We're holding a pound of black powder here. Perhaps all you really need is a pinch here and there to get the job done. A little peace of mind, a small relief from the terrifying reality of life, and understanding that this moment can be, no, is precious, and it would be bad form to treat it too harshly. And when you do run into a significant trial, well, we've got plenty of powder for that. Condensing yourself into the present moment is a skill that many search for, some claim to achieve, and few succeed with. Ask anyone about meditation, and I'm sure they'll have a litany ready for you. We know, and therefore I won't spend much time on it, but I do have a few notes. More than a simple practice of mindfulness. Now, don't think I denigrate the practice, I only poke fun at the charlatans. I'll introduce you to an idea from Eckhart Tolle, a German spiritual teacher and author of The Power of Now. Awareness is so much more than not thinking, as many low-level practitioners will say. Eckhart teaches us to watch the watcher. It is not that we should shut down thoughts, it is that we ought to remove ourselves from them. Allow them to flow past, like a river, without judgment, without holding on to them, to watch them as they are born, then drift away. Then, to step back even further, to watch the consciousness that watches, to see the judge within our own head for what he or she is, to, as Rudyard Kipling told us, think, but not make thoughts your aim. Sometimes I think we slip into this state by accident. It happens at the strangest of times, at least for me. At times when I am alone and suddenly grow weary of thoughts racing through my head. It feels like waking up without having ever fallen asleep. Suddenly, the shower handle seems very real. More real than it has ever been. And the silence born from the lack of intrusive thoughts pulls my awareness like a vacuum into the present moment. I feel like I can finally see the world as it is. I call these moments of lucidity, brief pauses in time that remind me exactly where I am.
You must feel the force around you.
Remember, concentrate on the moment. Feel, don't think. Use your instincts.
I'm sure you experience this periodically too. Who knows if regular meditation or what have you can cultivate this awareness, but it does seem like a good thing to remember, a tool that can quiet the chaos around us. Next, of course, let's explore the possibility that we do not know ourselves as well as we should. Emotional awareness is both a gift and a skill. While some of us are naturally introspective, it requires a significant, dedicated effort from others. And, as Alan Watts warned us, you never really can know yourself. Not entirely. We surprise ourselves all the time. More than that, if we're following the proper trajectory for life, given our most recent analysis of progress, then we need only look back at the person we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 1 year ago in many cases, to see an almost entirely different person. Gary Vaynerchuk often proclaims, people vastly overestimate what they can do in a year, and grossly underestimate what they can do in a decade. In his autobiography, Green Lights, Matthew McConaughey says that at the very early stage in his career, he was asked who he looked up to most. His answer? He looked up to the version of himself that was 10 years wiser. His hero was the full manifestation of his own potential. 10 years later, he was asked again if he had become his hero, if he had lived up to the man he had wanted to become. As you might now guess, he said, no, because my hero is always the man that I can become 10 years from now. It's a goal that I'll never reach, but am obliged to chase. I have my past self to chastise and run from, and my future self to admire and run towards. Now, one great way to narrow the scope of what your future self could be is to begin our negative analysis of what you cannot be. We will speak about the difference between lies and empowering lies soon, but suffice to say now that a prominent phrase of today bothers me very much. You can be anything if you set your mind to it. Well, this may be somewhat true if an individual was willing to break themselves in half to achieve an arbitrary goal. It cannot always be true and, by my estimation, is far more a lie than a truth. If little Tommy struggles with math, you should never say to Tommy, "Oh, you're still such a smart boy, this just isn't your subject," when Tommy is, in fact, dumber than a box of rocks. So too must a grown person understand the cloth that they are cut from. Not everyone has both the mental vigor and physical capacity to be an astronaut. If your mind's eye is too dull, then the last thing you should try to do is become an artist. The more agreeable your personality, the less likely you'll succeed as an entrepreneur. Again, another idea from episode 1, the Peter Pan principle. Until you give up the youthful potential of being anything, then you will never be able to grow into a master of any one thing. And as Peter F. Drucker notes in his book, Managing Oneself, published by the Harvard Business Review, only once in 100 years are we given a Da Vinci, Einstein, or Musk. Unless you really think that you are that 1 in 1 billion, then you need to accept that a great many things are off the table for you. You don't have some of the physical characteristics, the required personality traits, the mental or emotional predispositions, the age, the experience, the time, any one or more of those things. More to the point, if you intend to be considered good at what you do, at least in a professional manner, let's say, then you must restrict your options even further to the things that you have a real fighting chance at. The things that your uniqueness grants you advantages with. Things that you could work your way into the top 5% of. Trying to understand everything about yourself, let alone any other human being for that matter, may not be explicitly possible. But we do have a good few frameworks that we can work against that can get us properly aligned to the more prominent components of our personalities. Let's take some time to talk about our professional development. because careers consume much of our lives, and it's certainly nothing to ignore in the grand scheme of things. Firstly, I present to you a favorite talking point of the popular businessman Tai Lopez. In his video essays titled The 67 Steps to Health, Wealth, Love, and Happiness, Tai often refers to what is called the Eulerian Destiny. This is a simple diagram that is meant to be a launchpad for further analysis of one's predispositions. It helps us identify some seeds to the future that we can further validate with more extensive scrutiny later. The Eulerian Destiny is meant to emphasize components of your past and personality that can point like a compass towards work that is more likely fulfilling. It can also help us avoid hitting exceptionally large rocks, bad jobs that would leave one tired, depressed, and questioning the very meaning of existence. Envision 4 circles linked together around a central point. You've all seen the 2-circle Venn diagrams. Let's just add another 2 circles. One circle encompasses the things that you can effortlessly talk about on a Friday afternoon. What are you interested in? While you're at it, toss in the handful of things you'd think you'd pursue if only you had more time. Take careful note, I said think you'd pursue, knowing full well that you might not have experienced them fully, and also that this is the only place they belong. The things you may initially conjure up are a meager 1/8 of the puzzle. That's all. The second circle contains what is called stranger feedback. What do people who do not know you well compliment you for? Perhaps your seemingly natural public speaking capabilities, or lack thereof, or the creative lens through which you see the world, or your ability to work harder than anyone else. Next, what have you spent 10,000 hours getting good at? For those old enough, this is largely your work experience, given, of course, that you have actually gotten good at what you do. I should hope so, but I won't assume. For the youth listening, consider this the skills that you have put reasonable work into, though it can also include the things that you are naturally good at. But you do actually have to be good, not just, my mom says so, good. And lastly, I have an adjustment to propose to the common wheel you'd see if you were to look up this framework anywhere else. They've likely labeled it, "What did you grow up around?" I dislike this idea because I think it correlates the least with the future. Where you have been does not necessarily need to affect where you're going, only where you start from. Instead, I think it's better to open up yet another sub-discussion within this nesting doll of ideas. Personality. Humanity has had a very long time to grow in cognitive complexity, and all the while, parts of us that gained consciousness have been puzzling over what it all means. What the hell are we up to? I say this to emphasize the benefit you'll likely reap by enlisting some outside help with this bit. Some professional help. Now, I'm not suggesting you need therapy, but if we need to understand ourselves, then let's take it seriously and start measuring our characteristics against other people. Dozens of personality tests exist. I suggest you steer clear of most of them for the snake oil that they are. If you can complete an examination in 5 minutes, then you're getting conned. I'm sure there's a handful of credible tests out there. The one I'll direct you to is called Understand Myself, which benefits both from the research of Dr. Jordan Peterson and his colleagues, but also from a large testing pool. The more people who have their results stashed in the same test as you, the more accurate your results will be, because they are compared to a larger sample size of the broader population, providing greater diversity. This test is based on the Big Five model, which measures enthusiasm, withdrawal, compassion, industriousness, and openness. Each of these have their own subfacets. For example, industriousness consists of orderliness and conscientiousness, how hard you work, essentially. And openness, which is creativity, constitutes intellect and openness to new experiences. Let's combine this knowledge with the Eulerian Destiny. To give you a brief first-hand example, 2 years ago, in the winter following the unmentionable tragedy, I was plowing through the final semester of my bachelor's degree. At the time, just like everyone else in my position, I was still painfully unsure of what the future held, and was endlessly seeking opportunities that would launch my career into something worth being proud of. But what direction to take? There were so many jobs for this, that, and everything in between, and yet there also felt like nothing at all. Finally, after some social engineering and a, frankly, ridiculous amount of resume editing, I interviewed with Goldman Sachs, one of the largest investment banks in the world. I was incredibly excited for the opportunity, and even though the interview went well, technically speaking, the more I learned about what the job actually entailed, a pit of dread grew heavier in my stomach. This was for what they call an operational associate, dedicated to contract management and SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, documentation, which sounds fancy until you realize that it's glorified paper shuffling. Oh, it's important, all right, but heavily regulated. You'd better be damn sure your T's are crossed. That's not such a bad thing, is it? Well, it is for me. You see, I scored in the 96th percentile of industriousness, meaning, out of 100 people, I am more industrious than 96 of them. One of the facets of industriousness is orderliness, organization. Well, you'd imagine that goes hand in hand with this job, right? Not once you know that I also scored in the 96th percentile of trait openness, creativity, new experiences, the exact opposite of being weighed down by protocol. So where did that leave me? Long story short, I knew then that I was on the hunt for something that allowed for autonomy in building unique, critical solutions, somewhere I could grind to my heart's content in a creative and productive manner. Combine this with the technical skills I'd developed at university, consider this my 10,000 hours, and my help desk job at the time, and if nothing else, I knew that I was bound for something in the realm of IT. It was destiny after that granted me an excellent opportunity with my current employer and, well, I've got lots of stories of my own now. I hope this helps you pull these two ideas together and gives you a trail to follow in completing it on your own. Putting all this on the table for yourself brings clarity to your constituent elements, but it does leave you with a mess to do something with. Like a puzzle, if one can be so bold as to compare the human experience to a puzzle. The pieces still need assembled into a whole. Out of this mess, though, this giant ball of incomprehensible string, you need only find the right thread to pull on for the entire thing to unravel. Or, at the very least, the next small chunk that you can decipher independently. The next 18 months, maybe, if not the rest of your life all at once. That's a key to progress. Break down your next step as far as you have to, until it is small enough that you could do it, and actually would do it, no matter how embarrassingly small it may seem. We can see this in a conversation between Joe Rogan and Robert Downey Jr. here.
This concept of things just sort of falling into place, I'm a big believer in that too.
Yeah.
What is that though? Is that you getting out of your own way? Like what is that?
Isn't that 70% of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's 70% maintenance of what can I do to do my part to stay out of the way. And then the other part, I always think of it as like this little super thin, invisible thread. But you can feel the tug, and you have to be really gentle, and you have to pause when agitated, and you have to go for it when you're going to, like, there's four walls in here, which one has the map behind it? It's that one. And you knock down the wall, and it's there,
Yeah, what is that, though? That's a...
Synchronicity?
Yeah.
Intuition?
But labeling it is very dangerous because it's so filled with woo. Yeah. So it's, there's so many people that are hucksters that have, like, made a career out of sort of, like, labeling it. And
Sure.
defining it or teaching you how to get to it.
It's great because it's the commodity that you can't capitalize
Yeah.
on, and yet if you don't show proof of its existence, you can't even, you shouldn't even be qualified to speak on it. I don't know.
Right.
It's the big I don't know.
But
That's
when
why
it
it's so great.
happens, whether it happens with love or with friendship or with a career or with a path you're taking, you just know there's a smile. There's an inner smile like, yeah, this is it.
Well put.
I found it. This is it. I'm supposed to be doing this. Here we go. Here we go.
I love the comparison of the invisible thread with an inner smile. Pinocchio had his conscience, Jiminy Cricket. Socrates had his daemon, the inner voice. RDJ has his invisible thread. Whatever that is for you, find it. As an aside, did you notice how they both instantly recognized the sensitivity of this idea that false idols constantly bend it to their own designs? Now, I have a parallel note on this section before we move on, a caveat of sorts, and a dangerous one at that. I approach this with the utmost caution simply because it can be quite easy to, let's say, take things the wrong way. While I would not encourage you to take it with any salt, I would only say to take it for what it's worth. Nothing more or less. Put plainly, there is a difference between truth and utility. That is not to say that one should disregard or ignore the truth. Only that the truth can, in some circumstances, lack the utility that would keep it either relevant or meaningful. You'll recall the line we heard from The Dark Knight earlier.
Because sometimes truth isn't good enough. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded.
I'd like to provide you with a unique insight that I gleaned from Tom Bilyeu, the man who started Quest Nutrition, which is now a billion-dollar company, and the host of a well-received podcast known as Impact Theory. Tom is a high-octane individual that many admire for his relentless productivity and candid exploration of the human experience. On his website hangs a list of beliefs that he promotes in the name of pushing listeners to realize their fullest potential. There are 25 items, such as failure is temporary, move quickly beyond it, and it requires focus and disciplined practice to acquire new skills. But I'm primarily interested in these two. Rule 5. You can do anything you set your mind to without limitation. Rule 6. Number 5 is a lie. But it's an empowering lie, and we ought to do that which empowers us. We humans are so fond of lying to ourselves. I do agree with Tom, but in a moment you'll see why, though my warning is this. If you're not careful, your own knife can be quickly turned against you. For example, some will use this as the defense of their waywardness. They'll lie to themselves and then demand that you take part in their personal denial. Utility can be subjective, but truth cannot, and that's why this is dangerous. It's a double-edged weapon. Use it well.
It's a weapon to be wielded far away or up close. You can see yourself in it. It's beautiful. Until it makes you bleed.
You can, however, extend this to discover a hidden and poetic beauty in further blurring the divide between what is real and what is true. All that is true must be real, but not all that is real is true, strictly speaking. Take any story you like, that of Odysseus, Luke Skywalker, Zarathustra, Jesus Christ. Every one of them is real, within your heart and within the collective heart of our people. Could you ever doubt something like that? What does it matter if these stories are not technically true in part or in whole, if they are more real to you than many things that are true? This is what I mean by the difference between truth and utility. Not all things that are true are useful, Furthermore, not everything useful must be true.
Is this all real? Or is it just happening inside my head?
Of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
Now, I've taken the liberty of consulting the metaphorical crystal ball for you, and to absolutely nobody's surprise, it told me that you're going to be proverbially kicked in the teeth. When I asked the Magic 8 Ball when this would happen, it says either soon or unclear. The fact of the matter is that life has an inescapable element of RNG. We never know when or where it will strike, but it will.
Life is a storm, my young friend. You will bask in the sunlight one moment, be shattered on the rocks the next. What makes you a man is what you do when that storm comes. You must look into that storm and shout as you did in Rome. Do your worst, for I will do mine. Then the fates will know you as we know you.
And in facing life's challenges, remember that you will eventually fail. Perhaps not often, and, if you're lucky, then perhaps not when it matters most. But eventually, yes. Right now, everyone loves to say, it's okay to fail, failures are only learning opportunities. Sure, failure is inevitable, and embracing that fact can be the best way to turn one into a catalyst for progress. But try telling someone that when they're in the middle of one. It certainly doesn't feel okay.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
We are, all of us, imperfect. That's what allows us to endure the hero's journey. Because we're not heroes. Not yet. Rise, fall, and redemption. Redeem yourself from the pit of failure to heights greater than ever before. Be, at once, both the marble and the sculptor.
I'm not a hero.
Well, neither am I. But if we both keep pretending to be, perhaps others will be heroes in our name. Perhaps we will both be stories. And may those stories never end.
Often enough, the path will fork two ways, without any indication as to what lies at either end. Maybe they both look good, or maybe neither of them do, and only rough terrain or dreadful consequences can follow. 2 job opportunities? To leave your current partner in search of a better relationship? You know what these choices look like. If you find yourself stuck between a rock and a hard place, what can you do other than to choose the one you'll regret the least?
Sometimes the only choices you have are bad ones. But you still have to choose.
Because the path is unknowable. It is the nature of the universe to blend both good and bad, light and dark along the same path, forever entwined in both chaos and order. If nothing else, we have progress. And now we come at last to 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and both this morning equally lay. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Here, as we part ways somewhere in the mountains, you to your path, and I to mine. Remember that, for better or worse, your time is limited, and therefore precious.
Valam Morghulis.
All men must die. All men must serve. Memento mori, some will say. Remember your own mortality. This is the fundamental source of suffering.
If you want life, don't cling to it.
Die is the day worth living for!
But do not go gentle into that good night. Every beginning must have an end, but what you fill it with, that's up to you. This is your story, and you fill it page by page, regardless of what you do. Climb from the depths of chaos. Be wary of false idols. Choose to carve your name into the stars next to the hero of heroes. Someday, you will fall. And I pray that if nothing else, you have inspired others to be heroes in your name.
That's okay. We're all stories in the end. Just make it a good one, eh? Because it was, you know. It was the best.
Where you've been is what you'll see. So venture far beyond these shores, and the journey will set you free. Remember all that you've been, and study humanity, for you are an extension of where we have all been. Find stillness in the moment, and gratitude for all that is, and be ambitious for all that has yet to be. This is How to Be Who, and, as always, thanks for listening.